So I published my broad overview about Singapore in a previous video, and nothing bad happened. So I'm feeling emboldened to do more, right? And I'm gonna. I mean, I guess I should clarify what I meant by nothing bad happened. I don't mean I expect any response from my government. I mean more of like just talking about a country, talking about history, talking about those things. Uh, it invites disagreements. I think I've encountered that stuff on the internet before, and my YouTube channel isn't super big. But if I tweeted about it, I'm pretty sure I would get lots of questions, lots of feedback, all of that kind of thing. And so it's nice to have a place on YouTube where I can kind of just ramble for an hour potentially. I don't think I'm going to take that long, but I can ramble and I can kind of trust that the people hanging out have pretty good faith. Like, that I'm not right about everything and that I'm going to say things that are factually inaccurate in some level, right? But I'm presenting what is in my head, right? And I'm sorry if what's in my head is sometimes wrong, but isn't that the case for everybody? And then people kind of keep that to themselves, and then you remain ignorant, right? Or you remain whatever it is that you are, and you're safe from criticism, you're safe from scrutiny. And I actually think about being very public as a way of troubleshooting my thinking, right? And clarifying errors in my thinking and so on. It's a moderately effective way of doing it. I would say it can be a very effective way of doing it, but it can also be painful, and you don't entirely get to control the pace at which it happens. So it's a bit like surfing a wave that you don't control. Anyway, this over a minute. I want to talk about Singapore and national service, talking about the military, talk about my experiences. I mean, I guess I have been oscillating, whatever. I've been in doubt about whether I should make a video talking about my experiences specifically, like my 2 years in the army in the Singapore Armed Forces, and then like periodically we have reservists. So my next reservist cycle is in October. If you saw like a couple of years ago, or not even a couple of years ago, like last year, right? When I was in San Francisco in May 2019, right? I believe it was last year. Oh my god, the past year has been so long. Like the last 300-400 days have been so long that last year feels like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Anyway, I had hair coming down all the way down to here, which I thought was really cool. Like I feel like that's where my hair is supposed to be. I'm supposed to be a guy with long hair. That just felt more natural. But I have military reservist training every other year or so, and then I got to cut my hair. And the middle stage, and this is kind of in the middle stage, but like when it's growing out, it's not nice. But I have to cut my hair because I have to serve in the military, and periodically, I think I have like 5 or 6 more cycles to go, and I guess I will be free in like my late 30s or my 40s, and then I can finally grow my hair long, properly without interruption. But it's kind of why am I talking so much about my hair in a video about the military? But it's one instance. The last time I tried to pronounce instantiation, it's one instantiation of how your personal liberties are affected in a sense, right? And I think for my American friends in particular, like the idea of that seems foreign and intrusive and unacceptable to some degree. But you know what? Living in a place like Singapore, being Singaporean, being born and raised in Singapore, like that's kind of the trade-off, and there are Singaporean guys who don't like national service and who don't like that they had to spend 2 years plus of their lives in service to the country, and I want to make space for them and their perspectives as well, right? Not everyone's going to agree, but I guess I'll start from the beginning for me, right? When you're born as a Singaporean, if you're born male, and again, like there's some complications, right? Like trans women, so people who are born and assigned male at birth, if they transition, I believe they don't have to serve national service, but it's like it's a bureaucratic process. It's unpleasant, and I don't envy anybody who's had to deal with that. But And I'm pretty sure there are quite a few trans women who had served national service when they had not yet transitioned. For example, some people do that. And anyway, those people, I mean, not to diminish those people's struggles, but they are a small minority of the whole cohort, right? And anyway, most Singaporean men, if you're able-bodied, if you're like fit in like at a basic level, and there are degrees of fitness, so you have to go for like a fitness test and like a full body checkup when you're like 17-ish, and they will figure out what your PES status is, which is just like your physical exercise, like just how much physical stress can you be put under. And if you have like diabetes maybe, or if you have like really bad eyesight, or like whatever it is, like. And I was suspected of having something called Marfan syndrome. And Marfan syndrome is this thing where, if my understanding of it is correct, it's like the ratios in your body are a bit skewed. And so like you have, one of the symptoms is you have very long fingers, which I do. I do have very long fingers. And you're very tall and lanky, which I am. I'm very tall and lanky. But then it goes further. It's like your corneas are kind of messed up. Mine aren't. And like your heart rate is weird, which mine is... this is a bunch of things where people with Marfan's kind of can't do much exertion. I think it's a spectrum, and I think I'm on the spectrum but not in the danger zone, I think. But you never know, I might go jogging one day and drop dead. Could happen. Life is weird that way. It's happened to like professional marathoners, right? So you never know. But anyway, your PES status determines whether like what level of physical exertion that you can be allowed to undergo. And again, like you can, like, there are guys who they are fit, they want, and they a funny thing is, a lot of athletes, like people who like national athletes, sportsmen, soccer players and stuff like that, they have a remarkably low PES status because they've had injuries before. Like they've broken, torn their ACL or broken a knee or whatever. And when that happens, I'm not sure how exactly it works out, but I think it's something like the government / the military doesn't want to be liable for your injuries. And if you get injured during your national service, like everything's paid for and taken care of and stuff like that. But there is some gray area shit where you have like maybe you have a sports injury when you're like 16, and then like it gets aggravated during your national service, and then it's like so that's that. Anyway, I kind of went a bit faster than I intended. When you're a boy growing up in Singapore, you just know that national service is a thing. It's a thing that every Singaporean male does. So, your older siblings, your older cousins, when you're in secondary school, when you're in junior college, like, you will see older boys come back to collect their results or whatever, and their heads are shaved and they're wearing the uniforms. And the thing is, it's because it's so much a part of society. It's normalized, like nobody particularly thinks it's weird that no Singaporean men, it doesn't catch anybody by surprise. Like when you're 13, you're 10, you already know that in a few years you're gonna have to serve in the military. And like so not everybody serves NS in the military. You can also serve it in the police force or in the civil defense force. And I think even some of the police force might serve in the Coast Guard. I'm not entirely sure. But like one of my brothers was like one of my brothers is in the police. Another one of them is in the civil defense force, like an ambulance driver. And another one, I think so. And the last one was he was a store man, I think. And then he was anyway, it's you get to, so there's a lot of the military is a pretty big, again, and every one of my videos has to be contextualized by saying Singapore is very, very small. It's a tiny island city state. I would say it's probably around the size of like, so when I was in San Francisco, when I was in the Bay Area, it's like there's Oakland and Berkeley and San Francisco. It's like that. It's like a little bit more than that maybe. It's it's not that, it's a very small place. You can walk across the entire country in like 12 hours or so. And so like serving in the military, so like when I had to go to Pulau Tekong, which is an offshore island, so you get to go by ferry, like you go to Pasir Ris, Loyang, that area on the east of Singapore, and then you get on a boat. It's like a ferry. It's not luxurious, but it's not terrible either. You get on a boat, and the boat, there's like many boats all every day going back and forth between the mainland of Singapore and the offshore island, which is where the basic military training school is, right? And you go there, and it's like a very well furnished, it's not jungle warfare shit. You know what I mean? There are jungle competency training courses, and there are places you can go. But Singapore is so small, and like, you're never far from civilization. I guess so. On Pulau Tekong, which is an offshore island, you do take the ferry out, so you do feel like you're away from home, but not that far. You're like a 20-minute ferry ride away from home. But sometimes, I guess at night there are no ferries, but like unless you have like a medical emergency or something, then they can, they do have emergency ferries and helicopters and stuff if necessary, but it's never really necessary. I mean, well, I should be careful about saying that because people do get hurt fairly often, but the safety protocols and stuff are really, really stringent. Like, I guess when I was like maybe 17 or so, I did worry that, is national service going to be dangerous? I'm going to be handling a gun, a rifle. I'm going to be throwing a grenade. Like, that shit sounds dangerous. But then I went through it, and there's so many agonizing layers and layers of security checks. You got to check this. Somebody else got to check for you. It's just this. There's so much. It's such an obsessive security culture, which is good. It's what I would want for my sons, right? I would want them to be safe. I would want them to be secure. But having been through it myself, I will say that there's so much care put into trying to keep the soldiers safe, and of course, that's not going to be of any consolation to anybody who loses a loved one in an accident, right? But from my point of view, like, there's so much effort put into it that, like, there's so many fail safes, and especially after there were a couple of deaths in a relatively short period of time where, I have like a Facebook cover photo that's like that sounds like selectivism, right? But it could have been me. It could have been any of my friends, right? So that's very real. Like so Singaporean men, when we talk about military accidents and stuff, it's not a joke to us. It's not. It's like, it could be. I could go on my next reservist in October, right? And I could, like, accidents happen. I could get crushed by some, like a flipping armored personnel carrier or something. It could happen. It's just like, there is some amount of risk that you take as a soldier, and every Singaporean man goes through that. Like, the vast majority of Singaporean men go through that, and I do think that it was kind of good for me. I don't wanna. I've had so many conversations about this over the years, and I did not. I didn't enjoy my national service. It wasn't like the highlight of my life. Can I think of a better way to spend 2 years of my time? Yes. Would I have tried to skip it if I could have? I don't think I would, and didn't. But because every other guy goes through it, and so, like, if you're gonna skip it, you better have a pretty decent reason for it. Like, you have real health problems, or you have something. Like, if you're just skipping it because you can, you're kind of suggesting that you're better than everybody else. Which is, so I know of guys who've done that. I know of guys who've, like, faked medical issues, which is fucked up, because there are some people who have real medical issues that mean that they can't serve, and they want to serve but they're not allowed to. And, like, every time you have somebody trying to kind of skive their way through, it just contaminates the whole system. So fuck skivers, man, really. And anyway, I wanted to talk more about the big picture, which is about, like, Singapore's sovereignty, right? Like, so no country randomly just decides to make conscription a part of its thing, right? Like, so the thing you have to know about Singapore is that prior to its independence, right, it was, the people's the relationship that the people of Singapore had with the country has evolved over the years, and it became a nation state pretty much in the wake of the Japanese occupation and separation from Malaysia, right? Like, that's when, like, so in 1965, like, that was the beginning of, like, the current style of Singaporean identity, which is, like, with your passport, your red passport, which is now one of the most powerful passports in the world. #blessed. But I had to serve for it. It's not entirely just a lottery. I mean, there is the lottery of birth element, but, like, it's there are costs to being Singaporean that's not entirely obvious to non-Singaporeans, or it's kind of greatly over exaggerated in some ways. It's turned into like a boogeyman kind of shit. But at the same time, there are privileges, and it's just there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm trying to talk about it, but like, and I'm gonna probably ramble on a lot in a lot of videos before I get better and better at talking about these things. But I do feel like I have to get a bunch of stuff out of my system, right? I have, so like on R Singapore on Reddit, like if you want to look up all the points of views people have, you can look up all the conversations that people have on R Singapore about national service. It happens every few months, every week, like just this. And the thing is, like national servicemen, the boys, NSFs, guys who are 18 to 20-ish. I was once one of them, right? They do tend to skew kind of how do you say, frustrated, nihilistic. A bunch of them, they kind of like their girlfriends break up with them because, and like that's one of those little things that you don't really think about, like, where like, so you're 18 and maybe you have a girlfriend, and then she goes to university and you go to the military, and she's gonna, and because like Singaporean men serve for 2 years, they go to university after that. So in university, these women meet these older guys, right, who are like more mature and have more spending power, maybe, I'm not sure, and it is a pretty frequent phenomenon that people break up with their boyfriends when they go to national service. And that's just, it's one of those things. It's like, it is a sacrifice that you make for the sovereignty of your country. It is like, people will laugh when I say those things, but it's true. Like, there are a lot of guys who, as a part of their patriotic duty, experience a breakup with their girlfriend. Like, that's just life, man. That's just life as a Singaporean dude. And I guess what I want to do with this video is I feel like even the Singaporean government and the Singaporean armed forces has not done a sufficiently good job, in my view and my very high standards, has not done a sufficiently good job in helping Singaporeans, Singaporean men, Singaporean women, everybody, in understanding the important role that Singaporean men, boys, play in maintaining our national sovereignty. And I'm kind of recalling a conversation I had with my wife about some of my opinions on these things, where so she didn't have to serve, and from her point of view, which is also a valid point of view, like, I think there are some Singaporean guys who feel that Singaporean women should just shut up about national service. Should, like, either you serve, and it's kind of like the no uterus, no opinion thing. I don't know if that was a can of worms I just should not have brought in, but like, it's just, like, the Singaporean guys do often feel that, we had to sacrifice 2 years of our lives and you guys didn't, you girls, you women didn't. And some guys use that as a kind of like conversational trump card. Like, if you don't serve, you don't have the right to say shit, like, and that's they can't really say very much, right? Some women do. There's like the volunteer corps, and there are increasing number of women who are going through that, and there are female regulars. So they are like full-time career military people, and they make up, I don't know, 20-30% of the total military staff. Like, I still count as like a reserve or something, because I have reservists every couple of years. So we all do make up the numbers. And I'm trying to think of the questions that my wife asked me. One of the things she asked me was kind of like, why don't we just have a full-time professional army, right? And my response to that was something like, we could, but I do think that Singapore can definitely afford it. It can definitely afford to just raise the salaries of regulars to the point where, like, there is no need for, like, from a pure defense perspective, there's no need for like citizen soldiers. Like, you can just pay the soldiers more and more until more and more people want to join, and like you can greatly reduce the conscript thing. But I do think that as a city-state, as a small island city-state, which again, most countries don't know what that's like. My Indian friends from India don't know what that's like. My American friends from America don't know what that's like. They live in large countries. Singapore is a tiny island city-state, right? And, you could have like an air force. You could have like those kind of like tip of the spear. You could have commandos, right? Like those kind of tip of the spear military operations. But it is a very important part of our deterrence, I believe, that our entire fucking country is basically half our entire country is combat trained. I'm combat trained. I'll fuck you up. Right? Just kidding. I'm a friendly guy. But yeah, it's just, I do think that having the entire country involved in, and for a tiny island city state, I do believe that enhances the deterrence of, so because that's the role of a military in an island city state. Deterrence. Like, you're not gonna take over anybody else. You just want people to not fuck with you. And Singapore has a history of being fucked with. We were invaded by foreign forces on bicycles, right? The Japanese troops came through Malaysia on bicycles, and they murdered tens of thousands of us, 100,000 ish plus. Bombs were dropped, and just another flag was flying in the country, and it's you want to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? And another thing I pointed out to my wife was that, if you have an entirely professional army, that professional army becomes a very strong political force. Like, especially they can, military can overthrow the government potentially. Like, it happens in the region. It happens in Thailand from time to time, right? Depending on the relationship of the military to the population to the government, right? There's like this triangle or whatever. And I do feel a bit safer and more secure knowing that civilians in Singapore are embedded in the military apparatus. Like, I have my ex-boss, who I respect very much. He's a captain in the military in his reservists. And there's basically, like, every Singaporean man has a stake in the security apparatus of the country. And I think that makes us more grounded. It makes the military apparatus, in my opinion, that's how I feel. I don't know if it's entirely true, but I do feel that, it allows us to just have more scrutiny it makes the military itself less opaque, right? So there's that element. The first thing I talked about was, and then my wife was like, do you really expect all these boys to defend the country? And we idle the thing that even Singaporean guys sometimes don't appreciate when they say it's a common frustration. It's like, what's the point of national service? We don't even our training is not even very harsh. Like, if war really happened, I don't know if I'm confident enough in my combat skills to go ahead and fight. And the point is, we are idling the engine. We're keeping it warm in case that if war is appearing on the horizon as something we have to worry about, then we can turn up the heat. You know what I mean? We can ramp up the operations, and we can make training more intense, and we can because the more intense you make your training, the more hazardous it is to the soldiers, right? So during peacetime, you don't want to be pushing your soldiers so hard that people are dying in training, right? But if you strongly believe that there's a real threat of war coming, and that's what you have an intelligence service for, right? To figure out what's going on, foreign affairs. You want to know what the situation is in the world, and you want to believe if your intelligence believes that there's a credible threat that's assembling, then you can escalate your training in concert, right? And so even when I go on reservist, I understand that the whole reason I'm on reservist, it's not that me going on reservist is directly protecting Singapore. It's the process. The process is necessary, and I'm like I'm kind of just going through the process with my buddies, and we're like, hey, hi, how are you? It's kind of it's so that in the event of something in the future, you don't want to start putting together an army like the day you find out that your enemy is at the gate, right? Because then you have all these systems of communication and all that shit. That's just harrowing and terrible. Right. The next layer of it is social cohesion, right? And this is a thing that, again, the government talks about it, the army talks about it, and everyday Singaporeans are kind of, I would say that my friends are kind of, we have so when the government says it, right, or when the authorities say it, we kind of have our jokes and our, we don't want to accept everything they say kind of wholesale and then be like meek, sheep, right? But so when we think about it on our own, independently, it's true. It's true that serving in the military with all your, it's like when I meet fellow soldiers, so it's very common for Singaporean men when they meet, like when two women meet and their boyfriends meet each other for the first time, like a very easy conversation topic is, hey, what did you serve in? Like, oh, I was in signals. Oh, you were in signals? I was a combat engineer. Oh, were you in this division? Like, oh yeah, then what happened? Do you know this guy? And then the girlfriends are like, but it is a way for any two Singaporean men to bond instantly, right? And across social backgrounds, across financial backgrounds, socioeconomic. Like just and you will encounter people from all walks of life. You know, people from the top to the bottom, people who are rich, people who are poor. You know, in the military, I served with guys who, you know, one guy was like a grave digger. Like that's what he did. He would dig graves for a living. And I had a guy who was in my same unit. There was a guy who was oh gosh, he was a former drug addict who had spent like multiple years in prison, and he had like a children and everything, like he had like kids. And you know, I had a sergeant who was originally from China, and but he was a Singaporean citizen, and we would make fun of him. But you know, while we make fun of him, you feel that, like, you know, we want to laugh with him, and there's some nuance there that people miss. That when guys try to talk about it to a broader audience, it often doesn't translate properly. But yeah, you know, there's that. I knew some rich kids. Like I knew some guy whose dad apparently bought him like a Ferrari, and then also bought him like a practice car to crash around in if he had to I don't know. But like there's all kinds of people in the world, and you meet them in the military, from like very smart to the very not smart, to just all kinds of, you witness all kinds of misunderstandings, all kinds of cultural complications and confusions. And you know, I'll frame it like this. I can think of a better way to spend my time as an individual than to serve in the military, but I definitely preferred serving in the military versus going to school. School fucking sucked. I'm gonna make a separate video about that. For me, right? And most people probably don't even think that about school, but maybe that's a neurodivergent kind of thing, ADHD kind of thing. But like, you know, I appreciated my time in the military most of the time. I did have a couple of annoying superiors, but they prepared me for life in a sense, right? Like where I wouldn't. That's that. Let's get back to the big picture. Singapore sovereignty, military, deterrence, social cohesion. What else is there to say about that big picture? Do I think women should serve in the military? Well, I don't have very strong feelings about it. So some guys do. Some guys feel like it's a gender inequality issue that, you know, I in a way, I feel like chivalry is not dead in a sense where, you know, I think, like, that's my personal opinion, right? And I'm willing to be persuaded on this. I do think that it would be nice to involve women and girls in some form of national service, probably, but like, you know, expanding the capacity is something that would take time. You can't suddenly say next year all girls will have to serve, and there's like all kinds of complexity there. But like, you could slowly introduce something. I don't know. I'm not, like, designing these kind of big picture social institutions is not a joke, right? It's a very something. I guess it would be nice to encourage more women to volunteer and be involved in some part of the process for some amount of time. I do think that we don't actually need national service to be 2 years long for men. Like, I think as we get better at learning, and we get better at, so it used to be 2.5 years, which is pretty long, right? I think we can be shortened to like 1 year, 6 months or so. So like basic training is 3 months, and then like vocational training, like, so if you, after you've done with your basic training, and then they sort you into your houses. They sort you, what kind of, how are you going to specialize? You're going to be a combat engineer, signals guy, armor, artillery, whatever. Then when that happens, you do another amount of vocational training, and then if you're going to train to be like an officer or a sergeant, right, like you go to leadership school. I wanted to go to leadership school, but I was not combat fit enough. It's pretty sad. I was really looking forward to, because during my schooling years, I feel like I never quite put in maximum effort, and I was kind of hoping to go to the military and really kind of push myself, right? Really be a leader, and you know, just kind of give my best and try to help. But like, they're like, oh, you may have some disease, so we can't, you know. So I could talk for hours about like all the little military bureaucratic shit, and like, you know, I was bounced around from unit to unit, and like there's a bunch of stuff like that. But you know, I don't really want to make a video about that right now. Like that's for me and my friends to discuss in person. You know, it's not necessarily something I want to share with the whole world, because, you know, it's like talking about your spouse, or talking about like it's not that saying these things would be untrue, But it isn't necessary. Like, you gotta think about what you want to say and who you want to say it to. And yeah, so to some degree, I am doing this video as a bit of a PR thing, right? I'm not being paid by the government. Like, I'm probably on some fucking watch list from the government for being a prominent Singaporean who's kind of not establishment-y, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe I know. Who knows? But as I kind of outlined in my first video, that I do care about Singapore deeply. I consider myself well, the word patriot is a bit loaded, right? Because some people associate that with like this very blind, unthinking kind of patriotism. But as I said in my first video, I think Singapore is a very precious experiment, right, in Southeast Asia. And I think we have good that we can share with the world, and we can be better still. There are a bunch of things we can do to be better. And can the military be better than it is? Yeah, I think one thing I'm quite kind of happy to hear recently-ish is that people now have more choice about the vocations that they get. So there used to be this weird thing where, I knew a guy who was in signals who was like studied to be a medic, and he wanted to be a medic, but he was assigned to signals. And I simultaneously knew a medic who was like who's like an expert in like computing shit, like in code and whatnot. And like both of them, if they were allowed to trade vocations, they would both have been way happier, because they would be able to use their existing knowledge from their personal lives in their work and in their national service. And then there's that like win-win benefit that used to not be possible, but I think now it's increasingly a thing. That's good to hear, right? And yeah, I do have like happy, like I think I'll make a separate video kind of sharing the specifics of my national service story, like what it's like to march and shoot a gun and to hang out with other guys, sleep in a bunk with other guys. But I think this video, I wanted it to be more of I don't think I covered a lot of information about like the import, like the geopolitics of having a military. And but like the social, I guess I would want to restate like the social cohesion element. Like, it's nice that when I see a Singaporean man in whether he's in literal uniform or he's wearing like, so we have these like army singlets. If you watch my second guitar video, I'm wearing like my army, it's like the singlet that you wear, like your vest or whatever that you go jogging in, and like you see guys wearing that out and about all the time. And it's a reminder that we've been through the same experience, and that we kind of have that shared thing. And outsiders will say things like, "Ooh, that's indoctrination," that's and I don't know if those critics have very much to stand on anymore these days, because it really does seem like everywhere in the world there's no escaping bloody indoctrination of some form or the other. It's just that whether you get it from like your politics, like your partisan politics. And this is true not just in the US, right? It's true in the India, it's true in Brazil. I don't know the specifics of what's going on there, but I have like just everywhere in the world, it's like people are being it's always easy to say that other people are being indoctrinated. It's harder to appreciate that people are thinking for themselves, that the conditions that they're in are kind of a downstream of the events that they experience, right? So when I cut my hair, I kind of remind myself that there was a time where bombs from other countries dropped on this country, and we don't want it to happen anymore. And I do feel proud that I am helping to protect Singapore in a sense, because I do think it's something that deserves to be protected. And I have my criticisms of my country, and I feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not happy with, and I've written a lot about it. I've protested before, and I will be making more videos. I think my next video, I'm probably going to talk about school. And I have frustrations with school as a global institution, and I have frustrations that are Singapore specific, and it's hard for me to disentangle the two until I talk to more people elsewhere. But yeah, I can go on and on. Military sovereignty. What do people talk about? Should women serve? Can we make it shorter? Should we pay our soldiers more? If we can pay our soldiers more, we should pay our soldiers more. But I don't think that so my wife asked if we can afford to pay our soldiers more. I think they've already getting paid much more than I did, right? I think even after you include inflation. But like I believe that the problem as I see it, right? It's not so much that NSFs aren't getting paid enough. They will obviously, if you ask them, are you getting paid enough? They'll say, no, pay us more. And then if you give them a raise, they'll be happy 1 month, but like they will adjust to it, and then they'll just continue to say, please pay us more, right? That's always going to be the case. But I think the real thing that I would like to influence is like the dignity aspect. I think sometimes there's actually this thing going around that's like, there's people kind of dismiss them, right? Lowly army boys, no money, no hair, right? Like just kind of smelly on public transport, like go away army boy, like it's a bit of a dismissive thing. And I don't like that. I think, and like my views on this become very strong when I talk about Singaporean boys who have died in training. Like they died to protect our sovereignty. Like they did. It's the process. We made a decision to have this process, and this process has a trade-off where sometimes boys die, and like it could have been me, it could have been any of my friends. Like there's at least one guy who's like a friend of a friend. Like my friends knew him. Like it's a real thing. And I think we should have more respect for that. I think we should have a monument to the national servicemen on the mainland. So we do have like a in like the basic training military base, we have like a statue to it's like the Singapore flag and a couple of soldiers, and I think they're like children at the bottom, like saying, "Oh, you're protecting your children of the country." Like it's kind of propaganda shit. But like and what I'm suggesting is also propaganda shit. You can't really avoid propaganda. You can just try to be thoughtful about the propaganda that you choose, right? And currently we still have a statue of Sir Stamford Raffles, who was people have been arguing about it. Like he was, how terrible was he exactly? Should we still be celebrating him? And what I want to say is I would like a statue to the Singaporean soldier. I think, and I don't think it's glorifying the military, because again, it's like every citizen serves, and I don't really want a monument to... Well, okay, the cool thing is I think we have more and more like videos and stuff. I know that so Jack Neo, one of like our country's popular-ish filmmakers, I haven't watched it yet, but they made this whole series of movies called Ah Boys to Men, and it's like Ah Boys to Men, Ah Boys to Men 2, I think Ah Boys to Men 3. I should probably go and watch it and maybe do a review of it. Yeah, I should do that. Having made this video, I realized I should probably make that video. It's kind of pandering to the common. I mean, it's a lowest common denominator pandering, right? And it's like it's a bunch of stuff about it that's problematic and bad and wrong. But I should probably watch it anyway. And but yeah, I guess I'm trying to appeal to my audience, which is a more of a thoughtful, thinking people audience, right? And I think I don't think that I do think that thinking people should also appreciate the role that the Singaporean soldier plays. We're approaching 40 minutes, so I'm gonna end this here. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions. I might do like a follow-up video. I think I will so like I have another playlist where I talk about my personal memoir / life experiences. So I will probably do a video about my military experiences for that, but I don't really want to make that like, learn about Singapore, right? So it's early days. I don't have that many subscribers. It's not a big deal. I can always make more videos and I'll figure stuff out. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think, what your questions are, and so on. Done.